Welcome to the Your Life, Your Money podcast with Scott Searens, teaching you how to thrive in life, wealth, and retirement.
We're glad to have you back on Your Life, Your Money, the podcast helping you thrive in life, wealth, and retirement. I'm Ben George. He is Scott Searens, President and Financial Advisor over at Searens Financial Group. Scott, how are you today?
Ben, I'm doing great, but it's so hard to believe that we're in August already.
I know, right?
I can't believe it. Did you get any summer vacations in?
We've done a pretty good job this year. We got a couple other quick trips. We haven't taken any long trips. We've done a few 2-3 day trips, right, to the beach, to Nashville. We're going to go to the lake a couple of times. So overall, I'm happy with the ability to get out of town a little bit. How about you?
Yeah, great. Well, same here. My girlfriend and I, her name's Christy. So Christy and I, we did a few trips. I'll call it up north. So I'm in Illinois. Up north is Wisconsin. Her parents have a place there on the lake. So we went and stayed up there for Memorial Day weekend, 4th of July weekend. So some great times up there. And then we just did a trip up driving through Michigan, right on Lake Michigan. We went up to Mackinac Island. Wow, that was nice. That was like a universe of its own. You get off the boat, and there's no motorized vehicles. I mean, you're just looking at bicycles and horses, and that was really cool. And then right the day before that, we actually stopped at a national park, and it was called the Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes. And I guess my brain never shuts off from a work standpoint. I was trying to, right? We're on vacation, but we're on these sand dunes, and I just kind of got to give you a visual here. When you get there, basically it's 2 miles from where you park to the lake. And we're thinking 2-mile walk. It's not the end of the world, right? Like that's actually no problem. But what you add to it is what they call the sand dunes. And the sand dunes go about, I think I was just reading, like 260 feet in the air. Like the first incline is 130 feet, then you're going, up 50, down 50, up 50, down 50, then you go up to the next 130 feet. And I bet from, where you start to actually get to the lake, there's, 10 different of these hills, and you're trying to climb uphill in sand, and your foot's giving away every time. And as soon as you get to the top of the one hill, you're like, there's the lake, we're almost there. And she'd been there before, and she's like, yeah, we're not even close yet. And then you go down a hill, you go up the next hill, you're like, it looks like it's closer. But then there's 3 or 4 more hills left. And it was funny because when we got there, she asked the park ranger, she's like, how many people do you think actually make it to the lake? And he's like, I don't know. I would guess 30%. And wow. as we got there, we did go all the way to the lake, hiked all the way back, and it was about, there's like this halfway point, and you could just see like a lot of the people. They were just at this halfway point, probably turning around. Anyways, relating it, the market continues to go up and down. So as we're like going up and, down all these sand hills, I'm telling Christy, I'm like, hey, this is kind of just like work. I'm like, the market, goes up and you feel like you're seeing victory, like it's going to keep going up. And then you go down, you get to the top of that next hill and you're like, yeah, we're not even there yet. And, it's, I guess is, sticking with it, right? Sticking with our plan, sticking with our investments and sticking with it. We got all the way to the lake and we got to experience the reward, right? But there was a lot of ups and downs and false scenery, I'll say, meaning thinking that we were there, but it was just kind of that false scenery a little bit of being there. And I was like, this is kind of like what we're doing each and every day, and especially right now as the market's been very volatile, is, hey, sticking with the plan, getting all the way there, and not turning around halfway and potentially letting the short-term volatility, the really, really tough parts of the journey, ruin those long-term results. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And she's like, okay, can we go back to vacation now? And okay, but I thought I had to share it.
Hey, you're walking across the sand dunes, talking about the stock market and the ups and downs of life. I love it. It's perfect. But it kind of takes us into what we're talking about today, though. With the way things are going, we're trying to figure out ways to kind of offset the market and offset inflation especially. And one thing that's come up quite a bit, at least I've heard quite a bit, is iBonds. So we want to talk about whether or not you should be putting your money in these high interest Series I savings bonds. So should be a good conversation today, and I'm sure it's one that might pique a lot of interest from people because they've seen that interest rate on it. But I do want to remind you before we get started, log on, lifemoneyshow.com. That's our website. We'll put this podcast, all of our podcasts there. A ton of stuff to go back and listen through and help you continue to educate yourself. But while you're there, make sure you join Scott's Insiders List. Just log on the website, scroll down a little bit. You'll see it right there. Just drop in your name, email, and you'll get on there to get retirement tips. And just a quick, we don't have to get into it deep, but just what can somebody expect, Scott, from that Insiders List?
Yeah, part of the weekly email, we're giving tips like tax reduction strategies. So how to keep more of your hard-earned money with you and in your pocket versus giving it to the IRS, how to maximize your retirement income. And, as we go through times like today, setting yourself up so the market's not scaring you and ruining what your potential long-term results could be. So a lot of good tips, weekly email, including our wealth report. I think I find that people really, really enjoy it.
Great. Again, lifemoneyshow.com. All right, let's talk about these iBonds. It's interesting, Scott, because when I first heard somebody mention this to me, because I don't check the government site and these treasury site to see what the rates are, I had to kind of do a double take with somebody. I was like, hey, these iBonds are 9%. And at first I was like, I don't know the last time I've heard of a savings bond that was producing anything even close to that return. I got some from when I was really young that were gifted to me as a baby, right? They, cash these in 25, 30 years later.
Yep.
But I haven't heard much talk about savings bonds recently, but now all of a sudden it's a pretty big spot of interest right now.
And there's some truth to what you're hearing. Right now, the current interest rates for these iBonds is 9.62%. That's the rate that somebody can go and get through the month of October. And to your point, how often on our show have we ever talked about savings bonds? It's just, typically is not fitting into the asset allocation or the overall plan based on historic interest rates. But with inflation being so high, that's actually what these iBonds, what the interest rate is based off of. And so with inflation now being around 9%, the iBond interest rate, and like I said, right now it's 9.62%. They're issued by the U.S. Treasury. So, you're looking at, I'll call it a safer investment, right? Nothing is fully ever risk-free, but a much safer investment where you can get 9.62%. And that's where, some of it's not fixed forever comes in, and there's always some goods and some bads in regards to every instrument and tool out there, and it's not a lot of times that you and I are even sitting here talking about products and tools because we always look for them to fit in the plan. But I've received this question a lot, recently, and I thought it'd be really helpful just to talk about it.
Okay. Well, I know that one of the other things that I thought about when I heard about the iBonds and the 9% was, what's the catch, right? Why am I getting such a high interest rate on any cash right now, right? So is there anything that we need to know about these other than, hey, it is a true 9% return? Risk, I know you mentioned there are risks with everything, but what is it about these that we need to be aware of?
Well, you what you heard was correct. So right now it's a true 9.62% return on your money. But you're correct, there is a catch. And part of that 9.62%, it's broken up into two parts. There's a fixed interest rate, and then there's part of that interest rate is based on inflation. And so with inflation right now being upwards of or around 9%, that's why the return on these treasury bonds are so high. And the one thing to just know is that every 6 months, so that rate, that 9.62%, that's why I said it's only good through October. So then in October, they're reviewing, and every 6 months is when they adjust the interest rates. Now, if inflation continues to be high, I look for the rates on these iBonds to continue to stay high. But at some point in time, just part of the normal market cycle, interest rates are going to change. or I'm sorry, inflation rates are going to change. Inflation will go down. We're going to get back to normal averages. And then when that happens, you just have to really be aware that the interest rate on your iBond could drop at that time. So basically the interest rate goes in 6-month chunks, and every 6 months it's going to be reviewed, reevaluated, where's inflation at, and then the interest rate could change. I think a few other good points to know about these iBonds. One is just how much you can purchase. So the minimum purchase amount is $25, and then the maximum amount is $10,000, and that's $10,000 per person. So if you're a married couple, you and your spouse could each do $10,000. So, for some people, they might say, that's still an awesome deal. And for others, that have saved up a healthy amount, they might be looking at it going, well, wait a second, I'm only going to be able to keep up with, put $10,000 into this. I want to put, $100,000 into this. I want this really nice interest rate.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the government's, capping it off, and it's that $10,000. Now, if inflation is still high at the beginning of next year, you can do $10,000 this year per person. And then come January 1st, you can do another $10,000 next year per person as well. And that interest rate does compound semi-annually. So some good things in there. Some depends on how you look at that dollar amount. But I mean, heck, 9.62% on $10,000, that's a good rate of return. I mean, take everything that we can get in this economic condition right now. And then, like we talked earlier, it's I'll say a lower risk type investment. But a few points, Ben, I think that everybody should be aware of is that I'll call it the liquidity of it. And the one thing is that you can cash them in after 1 year. So if you're going to put the money aside, just be aware it's not like having your savings account where you can put it in and take it out whenever you so choose. You're going to put it in there for at least 1 year. And the other thing to be aware of is that if you cash it out, so they're actually looking for people to hold on to these for 5 years. But you have to keep it for 1 year. And if you cash it out before the 5 years, you are going to lose the previous 3 months worth of interest. So just a quick example on that. You hold on to it for 18 months, and then you decide that you need your $10,000, or you put in $5,000 or $2,000, whatever the amount is. But let's just say at 18 months, you cash out, you're only going to get 15 months of interest. I don't know. I look at that as probably still a pretty good deal. I mean, missing out on 3 months of interest when you're getting 9.62%, not too bad, right?
No.
I think another thing just to be aware of is that the interest rate could go down. The guarantee is only for that 6 months. After that, that could change. And then just doing some reviews, on the internet, looking up some things, looking up how other people are, talking about them. I did read some reviews that the website and the purchasing process is not very user-friendly, which I guess maybe dealing with a government website, probably to be expected, which then brings up the next point is don't forget you're dealing with the government, so make sure that you document everything that you do. And then I think just one thing to be aware of is that, a lot of people could be like, great, I've got all of my money in my IRA, or I've got all of my money in my 401k. How do I go and get this? And unfortunately, it's not something that you can use in your IRA or 401k. It has to be non-retirement money. So, hey, a lot of upsides, a few downsides. I don't know. If I weigh them out, I say that there's still a lot of upsides to the Series I savings bonds here to potentially use in your overall plan.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just stuff you just need to be aware of, to know that these things are going to happen, to know that the experience might not be great, that you might lose 3 months of interest potentially, just things that you need to be aware of before you get in there. And I even say too, like you mentioned that experience, and I thought immediately, because I'd gone to the website to check it out when I had first heard about them, and when I first got on there, Scott, like I legitimately thought I was on like some third-party website. You go to treasurydirect.gov, and it looks like it's amazing to me they don't have a better interface It just looked like you were on some site. Like I left and like did more research to try to make sure I was on the right page, because it raised a lot of the red flags. But it's just such a busy site, very wordy, hard to find what you want. Like, just all that is just part of that experience. It's not great.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was like some neon green and some blue.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing. I'm like, is this really the site, or is this just somebody who's
legit?
paying to be on the top of Google,
Exactly.
and then spam me and take the money? But it was the legitimate site. So yeah, good thing you brought that up. I think people really need to be aware of okay, the site really needs some updating, but the user experience, not only just looking at the site, but the user experience, unfortunately, is probably going to be not the best experience as well.
Yeah. All right, let's talk taxes too. Another question that people have about these iBonds. How do taxes play into this? Is this tax-free money?
Well, unfortunately, it's not, but there are some ways that you can, I'll say, defer the taxes. So you can opt to defer the tax on the interest until it matures, or until that 5 years, or until you redeem it, whether that's at year 1, year 2, year 4, whenever that is. So you can make that decision. Do you want to pay federal taxes as you go, as the interest comes to you, or do you just want to continue to collect that interest, and then when it matures or you go to redeem it, pay the federal tax on that interest all at once? But from a state standpoint, you don't have to worry about any tax. But there are federal taxes. You kind of get to choose when you want to pay those taxes on the interest. So there's a little bit of flexibility there, which we do a lot of tax planning with clients, and that's always helpful to know, because that could be some dollars that you would maybe potentially otherwise want to be doing with a Roth conversion, and deferring it to later could, help do more potential Roth conversions now, where you're paying the tax today on IRA dollars and getting them into a Roth. So, it's good to have that flexibility, and you definitely want to use that as part of your overall tax planning process.
Okay. Let's talk about the overall plan. The savings bond, where does that fit in to someone's plan? Like, how would you know if it's something you should buy?
Well, that's the interesting thing, right? Like, as you got intrigued with it because somebody else told you, hey, 9.62%. And frankly, I see YouTube videos and articles, and the way it's being exposed is, people are trying to create this, I'll call it clickbait, right? They want you to 9.6, 9% interest rate of return. People are probably clicking on it like crazy. But in the end, it still is, it's got to fit into your plan. And there's a few areas that, I would say where it could potentially fit in. One, again, thinking about non-retirement money, is if you've got a lot of surplus of funds, maybe you've got a big reserve built up, or sometimes people call it a rainy day fund, or just, excess sitting in your savings account, that money is money that's earmarked to be safe. Maybe it's either for your rainy day fund or for reserve, or just earmarked to be safe. You're not going to use it within the next year. That's the money I would target for it. And, if you only have $50,000, well, I wouldn't be taking 10,000 of it and, locking it up in a Series I savings bonds for the 1 year. But if you've got millions of dollars, and we work with people who have saved a lot up, and they like to also hold, I would say maybe excess amounts in cash, well, this is a good way to put some of that cash to work for you. So that would be the first way. And then, we always talk about the war chest, having the pool of funds not subject to volatility. So that's kind of another way that if you want to look at it in your overall investment plan, you can kind of look at it in your non-retirement accounts as part of those funds that aren't subject to volatility on that safer side. So that way you've got that ability to take maybe a more growth approach with some other funds.
Very good. Well, hopefully this gives you a little insight into iBonds, whether or not they might work for you. But again, if you are curious, want to learn more, you can always talk with your advisor or reach out to Scott directly, lifemoneyshow.com. Got a couple of listener questions too, Scott, I want to throw your way before we get out of here today. I want to start with James. speaking of interest rates. He says, if interest rates finally start going back up, should I change how I'm saving? I don't have very much in the bank right now because rates are so low.
Great question here by James. And I think, James maybe is asking this question, and this is what happens a lot of times is we're chasing different products. Oh, where's the rate of return at? Where's the interest rate at? And then you kind of start chasing different products. And what I would maybe suggest instead is giving every dollar a purpose. And we talk a lot on the show, in regards to, I call it the buckets. And let's kind of talk through the three different buckets. First bucket would be your liquidity or your reserve bucket. This, sometimes people also call it your rainy day fund. And this is where you're keeping cash, or we're just talking about the iBonds. This might be where the iBonds fit in, or your online savings or CDs. But this is the money that sometimes people say the rule of thumb's 3 months, 6 months. I find people are just going to do what makes them feel comfortable in this bucket. And so if the money needs to be saved because you need it in your reserve, it's money that you're going to spend within the next year, well, then put it towards something, either money market account, keep it in cash, use iBonds. I would say if you've got already enough there, but you're looking for a little higher rate of return, then shift over to the online savings accounts. Christy and I right now are like, it's kind of this competition where we each have different online savings accounts, and one goes up, and then I'm like, wait a second, did mine go up? And I look at mine, and then it's gone up, a few little percentage points above hers. And it's just, as interest rates rise right now, those online savings accounts are giving some really good rates of return as well. So start with that bucket. Now, if that bucket's filled up, you got enough in that bucket between all of those different products, instruments, and tools, then if you're somebody who's, in retirement or 1 to 5 years away from retirement, do you have enough in your war chest? Meaning, if the market were to drop, do you have enough in a pool of funds not subject to the same volatility as your equities, as your stocks, that you can go to supplement your income needs? So, I'm kind of walking James through here. What's your strategy? Rainy day fund filled up. We talked about a whole lot of different products you can use there. Great. Then go to your war chest. Do you have enough in there? I look at a war chest that could be bond funds. Sometimes people use annuities. We were talking earlier, the iBonds could fit in the war chest as well. Do you have enough in the war chest? If you've got enough there, then I would, target those savings, those dollars that you're saving over to the growth side of your plan, putting them in equities. This is money that would be, targeted to use 3+ years out and getting it into, we prefer, I say equities, right? But we prefer using funds, the ETFs, but getting it into funds that are growth oriented to help you keep up with and outpace inflation in your future.
All right, thanks for that, James. We appreciate it. Got one more from Rita. Says, I'm 61 years old and have never had a financial advisor. If I've made it this far on my own, surely I can make it the rest of the way, right?
Rita's got a very interesting question that I see and hear a lot from different folks saying, well, hey, I've done this on my own. Can I continue to just do it through my retirement? And I guess, and what I would say is, here's what I want to propose to Rita. I just want to propose some different questions to say, are you leaving any money on the table, whether it's from an investment standpoint, an income standpoint, a tax standpoint? So I don't necessarily have the answer for Rita, but what we can do is just walk through some questions that Rita or anybody listening can ask themselves to go, okay, am I capturing all of those things? And if so, great. Maybe, you've done enough research and you're doing a great job and you don't need a financial advisor. Not everybody does. But if you're not capturing everything, that's where a financial advisor could come in. So from a tax standpoint, are you saving your money into the proper tax account types? Meaning, are you tax efficient, or are you creating a potential, tax nightmare for yourself in the future? So where you're putting your money today, is your taxable income going to be higher or lower in the future? And I find a lot of people just saving and piling money to those IRAs and 401ks don't actually recognize that they could be creating a larger tax burden for themselves in the future. If you're already in retirement, have you set up a tax-efficient withdrawal schedule? Have you thought about strategies for Roth conversions? How about QCDs? Are you doing everything that you possibly can to help keep more of your hard-earned income, your hard-earned savings with you versus giving it to the IRS? The next subject would be income. From an income standpoint, if you're still working, this might not fall into place, right? You're just in that accumulation stage where you're saving money. But if you're approaching retirement, have you put together a retirement income plan? Do you know exactly how much that you can take out of all of your accounts and at the same time make that money last? And do you know when and where and how much of an adjustment that you would need to make if the market goes down, but also when you can pay yourself more if the market goes up? From an investment standpoint, are you truly fully diversified? Do you have the right asset allocation going on? We just got done talking about the different buckets. Are you in an investment strategy that matches your future income needs? Do you have that strategy in place that as we're going through what we're seeing today, a 20% downturn, that you're comfortable enough to stick with your plan and stick with your strategy? Are you investing from a tax-efficient standpoint? So a lot of questions, Ben, and then there's health, long-term care. Have you thought about long-term care cost? And, if you're to need long-term care, should you have long-term care protection? Or would you be able to afford to pay for long-term care from your own investment accounts? I mean, long-term care can be upwards of $90,000 a year. And then I'll just end on the note of legacy or estate planning. Do you have your estate in order? And I find working with a lot of clients that nobody ever plans to run out of money, and most have actually saved up a surplus in addition to what they actually need. And do you have a plan to pass on your wealth in the most tax-efficient manner possible? So, Rita's the only one that can answer this question, but hopefully all of those questions that I asked also help others go, yeah, I've got all of that in place, or, boy, nobody's talked to me about that before. Maybe I should sit down with a financial advisor.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of things, it's the stuff that you don't know that can get you in trouble and just you're not even aware of. So that's where an advisor comes in. But a good question, Rita, and glad that you've been able to tackle that on your own so far. But if you do want to sit down and just see what Scott could do for you and for your financial future, you can always find him online, lifemoneyshow.com. While you're there, please join the Insiders List and make sure, Scott, you can always get that 15-minute phone call, right? I mean, that's the best place to start if you have any questions about planning.
That's where we start. We've got our process that covers all of the 5 areas that I was just mentioning in that question. However, it all just starts with a 15-minute phone call. Let's not worry about all of that detail just yet. Let's start with a 15-minute phone call. Help me understand what's on your mind. I'm just going to ask you, how can I help the most? We're going to have a discussion, and if I feel like I can continue to bring value and benefit to your overall situation, I'm going to let you know that, and we'll talk about the next steps in the process. If everything's in good order, or maybe you just don't need my help, but you need the help or support of somebody else, I'm going to let you know that too, and we're going to always point you in the right direction.
Again, you can get in touch with Scott. Just go lifemoneyshow.com. All right, Scott, great stuff. The iBond. I know we answered some questions today for people, and I know this is one that I'm sure you'll probably still get questions about as long as the interest rate stays high, but I think we did a good job kind of sorting out the details today.
Hey, it was a great conversation. Look forward to the next one.
Thanks for listening to Your Life, Your Money for Scott Sierens over at Sierens Financial in the Chicagoland suburbs. I am Ben George. We'll talk to you on the next episode.
Sierens Financial Group is an independent financial services firm that utilizes a variety of investment and insurance products. Investment advisory services offered only by duly registered individuals through AE Wealth Management, LLC. AE Wealth Management and Sierens Financial Group, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Sierens Financial Group, Inc. is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein, provided by third parties, have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Sierens Financial Group, Inc.